And it's now my immense pleasure to introduce Suzanne Hefuna, who grew up in Egypt, in Germany, and in Austria in 1992. Suzanne completed a postgraduate at the Institute for New Media with Peter Weibel. We want to remember Peter Weibel here, who passed away last year, who was such an amazing pioneer of art, technology, but foremost also an amazing teacher, as Suzanne always says. Suzanne has both German and also Egyptian roots, which she connects in her work to build bridges, many bridges. And this exchange is very much a vehicle for her work, which she creates with urban imagery and also typography, which she encounters, but also with the traditions and peculiarities of both cultures, using in a way different cities as her studio. We're incredibly excited that Suzanne, like every year, we have an artist here in residence, actually in Zurich with Engadin Art Talk with the Lyceum, who works with the student there. We're going to hear about that as well, and there is also going to be a special surprise as part of this talk, which goes beyond the verbal. Please give a very, very warm welcome to Suzanne Hefuna. Suzanne, thank you so much for being here. And of course, I forgot completely to mention that you are now based in Graubünden.
Yes.
So Suzanne is now based in Chur. And I thought it would be interesting to begin with the beginning, because I remember when we met first, you told me that you drew as a child and that for you it was a way to survive, to communicate with the world, and to kind of create your own language. Can you tell us about these beginnings?
Yes, because I was born into this situation. One parent was Egyptian, one German, and as a child we moved between these two countries, and I always was the same person, but the reaction from outside and feedback was different, or if something was talked or I saw an object or whatever, it had different meanings in the different cultures and contexts. And at one point, I just started to create my own language and started to draw and interact with the world by painting, drawing, and have my own world beyond these other worlds.
And looking at these drawings, you've always been attracted to abstract forms of structures. Molecules have been important, DNA, all kinds of modules, and you then bring these structures very much into society. You bring them into cities, you bring them into workshops, you bring them into participatory artworks. So in a way, there is such a deep connection to this topic, form and impact. So I wanted to ask you to maybe, at the beginning of this conversation, also tell us a little bit more about your connection to this theme.
The connection is that everything, all inspiration and impact for my forms, which I do in drawings or installation or performance, is life. So I'm always triggered by life experience, and this triggered thoughts, and the thoughts I then translate into either drawings, or I work with people, have projects with people like dance projects, or I make installations, but it's always like related to my life and experience. And something triggers that I then start to translate it in an artwork.
And in the background, we have images of different of your projects. And one project which keeps appearing is, of course, your project at Speaker's Corner, which we organized with the Serpentine, with Julia Peyton-Johns, who is here also. It's wonderful that Julia is here, the former director of the Serpentine. So Julia and I invited you to come to Speaker's Corner and develop actually a project where people could go and express all sorts of, thoughts. And it was basically part of an Edgware Road project in 2011. And there was also a connection there to your project in Townhouse in Cairo. Can you tell us a little bit about this project, how you connected London and Cairo and worked in such an unexpected way with public space?
Townhouse was a non-profit space in Cairo, and it was very important for me. I worked a lot there. I made workshops. I showed my work. Like also, this work was with women, where I collected objects from their homes, which have special meaning and fantasies of the women. And for the Edgeware Road project was the idea to switch locations to bring the Egyptian atmosphere to Hyde Park, and also bring some atmosphere from London to Cairo. So some videos were shown in coffee shops in Egypt at the same time. It was like a preparation of 1 year, the project. And I worked with people from the street in Egypt, not artists, and children, older people, men, women, and also with tent makers. And there were different tents built, and then the people were stitching their stories, life stories, and messages they wanted to give to London into inside the tents, and then the tents were transported to London, and it was a 3 days event. And in London, I did a workshop with kids in the school about sentences which were in the school, like, for example, it takes a village to raise a child, or your thoughts from today will form your future. And these are abstract sentences in the school, and I thought the children should maybe experience these words through their bodies. So I made costumes with these sentences, and we rehearsed also in the park movement of the students together, translating the sentences into movement. And all this was for 3 days in the park. Like there was the tents from Egypt, discussions, structures from Egypt, palm wood structures, and the dancers, and also people could talk what they wanted to talk. So it was like a mix.
And it was very connected actually to demonstrations held at Tahrir Square. It was obviously connected to the Arab Spring, and you gathered in a way personal stories. I remember also there were like slogans and messages. Can you tell us more about that? Because words enter often the work through these.
In my own work?
Yeah.
So I also capture words from which I see, or like, for example, on the street, also in New York, when I captured words from homeless people, like I was once like you, or some words like this, and then I use the words and translate them into paintings or drawings, and so the words become another form. They are more like an image. Yes.
And you mentioned Townhouse, and obviously we all saw the amazing projects of Rick Lowe, which was such an inspiration. I went there, I think, in 96 or 7 to visit the row houses. And then I visited you in Cairo. And Townhouse was in a similar way. I mean, it's artist-run space. It was run by William Wells, an artist. And there was an amazing thing which happened, the porosity between that artist-run space and the street. Can you tell us a little bit about this model? Because it's now obviously stopped, and William was attacked, had to leave Cairo. But I think it's important that we remember this model.
So it was opened 1998, and I met William Wells some weeks before he opened the space, and it's downtown Cairo. It was downtown Cairo, and he opened with one room, townhouse, one room, and then over the years it became like the whole area, all the streets around. It took many years, and he also involved, or there were also the people from the street were involved in workshops, and so it mixed. At Townhouse, it was very inspiring because people which were not from the art world mixed up with people from the art world. And also many things happened on the street and inside the space. And it was, that's what I wanted also to bring to Hyde Park when we did this project, the atmosphere. So,
Wonderful. And we are now going to talk about what's happening here.
Yes.
And we have a surprise. So if we can now have the surprise. Suzanne created a work for all of you, which we are now invited to eat and which will bring us all together. So this artwork will now be distributed.
It's one of my drawings and you can eat the drawing. And it's inspired of the area here in Engadin. It's an Engadin walnut tart in small. And it has also a reason because when I moved here to the Engadin 2 years ago, I discovered, because I was also interested in Cairo in the Café Groppi. I did a work about it, and Café Groppi was also in downtown, or is still in downtown near the townhouse, and it was actually it was Swiss Zuckerbäcker which went to Cairo and opened this Café Groppi and brought cakes and ice cream to Egypt, and it was a very important cafe in films, in Egyptian films, and I did also an installation above it was also the first Photo Cairo, that I had a banner on top of Café Groppi, and it was now interesting for me how that here from Engadin the people left and they made coffee shops all over the world.
Yeah, can you tell us about that? Because I wasn't aware of that before, that actually people from the Engadin some went to France.
Yes.
And that kind of then led to this Nusstarte.
Yes. And then somebody brought this walnut to this region and invented, when they came back, because after some years they all came back, or many came back. How does it I hope you like the cake. So when they came back, and then they were building palaces here when they came back, yes.
Wonderful. We thought that it would be good to have a little bit more time for questions in this session. So I think we should, first of all, a big round of applause for Suzanne Hefuna. And as Daniel Baumann always says, and we need to listen to that, we need to liberate time for questions. So do we have questions or comments for Suzanne? Or comments? Yeah, Benny here. If you can have the microphone in the first and in the second row. Christina.
What does the bee it's on the cake say?
Yes, somebody asked this yesterday, and I said, just eat it and you will know it.
Oh.
So it means, I think this is also interesting, because we talked about this before, that or to be now in this moment. This was intended by myself, but it's everybody will think maybe something else. So, yeah, it's also part of my work that it has meanings, different meanings. It depends who is looking at the work or who experienced the work.
Thank you. We have a question in the first row, and then there's one here in the fourth row. Yeah.
Okay. So Susanna, you mentioned at the beginning of this conversation that there are particular things meaning different things in different cultures. So would you give an example what was your experience, certain things in your origin and then where you grew up, and probably globally?
When I grew up as a child, of course, I was not an artist, but I could experience that. Because my family is from the Nile Delta in Egypt, from the Nile Delta. It's like a village, very small, also cotton fields and rice fields. It's not the city Cairo, because this is a different society. And it was different. It's very small things. You cannot really even say what like behavior, or what you do and what you don't do, how you look, watch things or not. And later also, then I discovered that if you talk, like words have also different meanings. It depends on the culture of the observer who looks at the words and what they know or how they observe the words. And I used it because I do a lot of work with words where it has different meaning, like layers of meanings. And I exhibited my work all over the world, also often in Arab countries or then in the Western world, and they are viewed very different. So the people see my work different. They read it different, they experience the work different.
Great. We have Mark, there were questions here, and I think in the first and second row, if we can have the microphones.
Thank you, Suzanne. That was really interesting. I have a question about the exhibit in the Serpentine Gallery, because the revolution has it's not about form, it's also about meaning and ethos and pathos and whatever. And I was wondering about the creative process that you went through to try and avoid that and go beyond the formal in the exhibition.
You mean in Egypt or?
Oh, when you transferred it to the
Hyde Park.
Serpentine.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Hyde Park.
Yeah.
It's the same. Yeah.
How the experience was for I didn't exactly understand the.
Obviously, there are certain forms associated with the revolution, the tents, the circle, whatever, the crowds and so forth. And so I'm wondering about its transportation outside context and how you avoided the pitfall of just replicating something formally and going for something deeper, for a deeper meaning.
Yes. It was like Hyde Park because it was about Edgware Road. It's the street where the Arabic people are also living, and so many came and visited who normally don't visit museums, and because you could go into the tents and you saw the life stories of the people. There were also videos about everybody who did the tent, and it was not necessary about revolution what was in the tent. It was their life stories, what they wanted to tell. And so the audience in London could go inside and experience. And also some people from Townhouse came and were also at the festival. This was the workshop here in the school.
Yeah, that happened yesterday.
Yes.
It's actually great to hear more about that, because you worked with the students of the Lyceum here and produced work.
Yes, originally I did bags where I was inspired, because I said before I'm always inspired by some experiences. I was inspired in Abu Dhabi when I was teaching there, and I discovered that the women, I saw it like this, that women, this were the bags in Abu Dhabi. They had big bags, always like Gucci bags or some other labels. And I thought I was inspired to make bags which have other meanings like myself, or they would build sentences with different other words. And so I did something similar in 2 hours with the school here and young kids, about the word be also, and that they should make the bags what they did in 2 hours yesterday. But we discussed before also the words and the meanings and what they think about it. And
basically it's understood in each culture. Is that correct?
I don't know. Yes,
No,
not this. Yes, I can't answer this because I don't know. Yes, it's an English word. Yes, of course, but.
Yes, thank you for your presentation of the work that I find very interesting. And if I think of the conventional venue of a drawing or a painting, or the location where a painting and a drawing was and still can be, it is flat. It is a flat surface and often with a border. What I find interesting that in your work, the drawing takes totally other surfaces that are nowadays, you say it's performative, or in a movement, in a body movement. And if I think that we just ate a cake, it goes still in another dimension. Now I heard you were interested, or you are interested, in molecule systems and DNA systems. My question is there an interest in the other dimension of occurrence of something that shows itself or can't show itself anymore, like when it is eaten?
Acoustically, I didn't.
Yeah, I also had acoustic difficulties. Could just
Is
rephrase there was an acoustic problem, the last part, your question, where you
Yeah.
said, yeah.
But it was clear that I pointed out that you are interested in molecule systems, DNA systems, as I heard that Hans Ulrich Obrist said. My question is if you are on purpose interested in the shifting dimensionality of an occurrence of something you show as showing that you can see, or sometimes you can't see anymore. As nowadays we have to do with many dimensions, naturally the social texture, but also in science we go to dimensions we can't experience. It's a question today.
Maybe the Together project, I don't know if...
Yeah, I mean, the multidimensionality, I mean, if you think about the 11 dimensions in superstring theory, there's so many dimensions in the layering of your drawings.
Yes,
Maybe that's a connection, no?
Yeah, the drawings are always layers of tracing paper also, but maybe I can share one project which I did in Manchester. The title was Together, and the idea was I wanted to do something with refugees and about that we all carry trauma and memory and so on in our bodies, and not only in the brain, also in the muscles and cells and so on. And this was also 1 year project in Manchester with 20 people from different countries, men, women, children, and they spoke different languages. And I worked together with Wayne McGregor Dance Company, because the idea was to translate their stories, also life stories, into professional dance. But this took like 1 year, and first to be opened up with drawings and then telling stories. And then they brought objects which they liked and talked about the objects. For example, one woman, she brought a scarf of her mother, which was no more alive, and talked about the smell in this scarf. And then in the end, we rehearsed their stories into dance. And it was also in a park for the festival.
Yeah, it was part of MIF, of the Manchester International Festival. Maybe one very last question to wrap it up. One thing which is fascinating, and that happened really with the Edgware Road project, when Julia and also Sally Talent and I invited you there, it became kind of almost like a portrait of a street, because we obviously connected the Edgware Road to Beirut, to Cairo. It was like a civic art project, and artists worked in the Edgware Road. But you kind of got all this feedback. You basically, there were flyers, you gathered, and I mean, in a way, it's almost like a portrait of a city. And you did a similar thing, for example, I think in 2000, at the beginning of the 2000s in Cape Town, where you did an installation there at the National Gallery in Cape Town, and you enlarged the nafas and transported it there, but then you gave out flyers. And really a majority, a big part of the artwork was that what came back and the kind of portrait you made. Can you talk about that?
This was also like the first time I was triggered to work with objects, with people. I was 3 months artist in residence in Cape Town. And I met, I also did workshops with Muslim women, and then I met at Stellenbosch University, the white community, and I met so many different communities. And I was invited also to exhibit at National Gallery. And then I discovered that all these people I met, they never met in their lifetime, even they were all in Cape Town or in this area. And this triggered then this idea that I brought like a palmwood cage, afas, it. It's all over on the streets in Egypt, like a structure. and I wanted that it's really shipped from Egypt to Cape Town. So the whole process that it takes away from, it's made in Egypt by palm wood, and it was like a 2 by 2 meter square cage, and it was installed in at the entrance of the National Gallery, and then I gave out flyers and invited all people to bring an object related to their own identity and not the group they belong to, because everybody always told me and to whom they belong, to which group, and that they never meet other people. And this was very touching, and because then people came and placed and they have never been in the museum before because they never entered the museum. And they came then also to the opening and brought food. Now it reminds me, it also brought food like we did now. I didn't think. So somebody brought food and others were singing and dancing. And this was, it was the first time in this National Gallery that something like this happened. But it was, I didn't know when I started what will be the result of the whole project. I start somewhere and yeah.
Like the project here, which we will, of course, continue with the students. Susanne, thank you so much, and we look very much forward to seeing your exhibition. Susanne will have an exhibition next year in Chur at the museum. The director is also here. Big round of applause for Susanne Hefuna.
You have to eat it. I also.
And we now also have to eat the cake.